All right, everybody, welcome to Tricks Triple Six. Today, I'm so excited to feature my friend John Davis, who is a public librarian who has been running D&D campaigns for the county library. So, a public servant and dungeon master. So, I'm going to run the first part of that interview, and then we'll break and do some tunes and just kind of coast through a conversation. Okay, everybody, welcome to a special Tricks Triple Six presentation. I'm really excited to introduce my friend John, and I'll let him talk a little bit about himself. But one of the things that the idea of like a social justice bard is music, storytelling, and art. Like there are lots of different ways that these things relate, not just music, to the experience of being human and imagination and I think stuff like that was so critical to me, especially as a kid and, you know, now as an adult in these dark times. But I'm going to let John speak a little bit about himself and projects that he's working on, and then we'll get into some details. So take it away.
Hi, my name is John Davis, and I am an adult services librarian at the Durham County Library here in Durham, North Carolina. And I have been doing adult programming for about a decade now. And one of my most successful programs, and the one that's relevant to Madison's mission here, is the Dungeons and Dragons programming that I do here at the library. It'll start next month. It will have been 9 years that I've been doing it at the library. It really comes out of what has been a hobby of mine now for over 25 years, which is tabletop role-playing. I started back when I was a kid, and it has continued on well into adulthood, and now into middle age. I won't think about that too hard. But anyway, and what I've been doing at the library has been instead of doing a big campaign thing that people have to like commit to, it's been done in these little bite-sized 2 to 4 hour, it really depends on the player's long adventure that you just show up for. There are pre-generated characters. We start in media res, the adventure is happening, and then couple of hours later, everybody's done and they're heroes or dead. Those are the two options in Dungeons and Dragons most of the time. And as part of that, I have been leveraging some of my skills that I picked up over the years. Like Madison, I have a background in clowning. I was trained by Mr. Rainbow, a wonderful clown here in Durham, and that has informed a lot of my professional practice, not just doing silly voices and acting for the Dungeons and Dragons games that I do, but, you know, anything that involves emoting with the body and the face.
Yeah, and I want to mention, talking about storytelling as sort of a physical thing, I think, I don't want to get too off topic on it, but like you're saying, I'm 100% down with the way clowns and other sorts of body storytelling, acting, I mean, this is all kind of related, and it can do so much to kind of, again, make it immersive. And talking about immersion in your programs, during these modern times, we have access to so many tools that and ideas that can really bring this stuff together. And I think especially talking about working with adult programs and having to do more bite-sized things, it's like you really want to pack a punch in maybe a roll for initiative. Mm-hmm. Well, do you want to... why don't you start telling us a little bit more about how you run the games that you run?
So, like I said, the basic structure of the game, you know, people sign up, folks get seats, they show up the day of, and if they have shown up early, if they get there back in the before times, I would, over the intercom, do an announcement, a little teaser trailer. Like at its most basic, it would be kind of like an in a world sort of deal, like a movie trailer, but eventually that progressed to me. Sometimes it would be the person who was hiring them, sometimes it would be the villain, sometimes it would be just something to kind of establish the setting and the story that they were coming into. And people were encouraged, if you heard the trailer, if you made it here in time for the announcement, that's information that you take into the adventure. And it would always be a little like there would be some useful nugget in there almost every time that would give people who showed up early an edge. So it was part this creative thing to build the immersion. It was part It was part something that I could do that would get attention from everyone in the building to maybe have people just drop in and check it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was part to encourage people to show up early because people would show up late and they wouldn't get their seats and they would be sad. And I'd be like, well, you could have shown up early.
That's an excellent tactic to sort of combine something that's useful, like, because it's not like bell work. Like, this is a program for fun. It's not homework. So you don't want people to feel like, but it gives that little extra incentive so organically. I think that's a really smart idea. I mean,
that was the idea. I have a lot of things that are like that in the program. There are little consumable things like a healing potion or an action point or the cool magical power of a magical weapon that you unlock. And once you've used that, it's gone until you sit out a month and let someone else play. So look, you're taking turns and letting other people play, and you're getting your cool stuff back. It's that all sorts of things like that built into the game. I'm always happy when new people show up and get to play their first time. I'm almost even happier when a new person shows up, doesn't get to play, watches, and then is like, that was really cool. I can't wait for next month. I'm going to sign up first thing. And I get to tell them, well, you get priority seating now because you showed up. You've shown that you can show up, so you're probably going to get one of those new player seats.
what are some of your goals for a table, besides like, oh, I want everyone to have a good experience, but like, what are some...
Well, ideally, the very top priority is what you just said, a good experience. But I narrow it down a little bit more. I refine it to, I want everyone to play a beautiful game. I want everyone to walk away from the table with at least one or two things that they want to go out and say to someone, hey, I played Dungeons and Dragons. Let me tell you about this cool thing that happened at the table. I want people to walk away with stories that they want to share with people. Part of that is, that means that you did a good job. That means that something fun and special happened at the table. And it's also pretty good word-of-mouth advertising to bring in more people and get them engaged in, maybe they'll tell a handful of their friends and one will go, hey, does that happen every month? And then I've got a potential new player. It's great. That's the biggest thing. The second thing is I want to help people who are, because there's always one or two seats reserved for new players. I want new players to get over any hesitation or discomfort that they have with the system and any hesitation and discomfort they have with the concept of role-playing. Because both of those things, those are the two big hurdles to engaging with a role-playing game. Is the system so intimidating that it's just putting me off? And am I able to separate myself from my self-consciousness to the point that I can engage in what is grown-up cops and robbers? Like, we're playing pretend as grown-ups, and some people have a hard time getting over that fact and just leaning into it. And let's be clear, being a little silly, because even if it's a dark, grim, gritty adult story, which we do not do at the library because 9 out of 10 times there's a kid at the table, you're still sitting around a table with your friends playing pretend, and there is something inherently silly about that.
I just love John's take on so much of this, just like in the general sense, but also like how it applies to working in a library. So in honor of John and our conversation about storytelling and D&D, I have some D&D themed songs. But I thought I would try to play... I've never tried this all the way through, so I thought I'd try like a chill version of DnD Cowgirl. So let's see what... in the style of the Weebies. She was a D&D cowgirl with a loaded D20 with auburn hair like a shiny new penny. Stole my core books, my heart, and my favorite pen. And I know I'm never gonna get 'em back again. Wandering around the game floor, wasn't looking to score. Saw it by the registrar. signed up for a table faster than I ever had before. She was a DnD cowgirl with a loaded D20 with auburn hair like a shiny new penny. She stole my core books, my heart, and my favorite pen. And I know I'm never gonna get 'em back again. With a bonus, charisma, and a smile, and an enigma, well, the game didn't go as planned. She wasn't a strange shooter, but we just couldn't put her. It was the most fun we'd ever had. She was a D&D cowgirl with a loaded D20 with auburn hair like a shiny new penny. She stole my core books, my heart, and my favorite pen. And I know I'm never gonna get 'em back again. We went back to my place and showed her my new bookcase, game and books galore. Went out for some Cheetos, but you know how this goes. She was already out the door. She was a D&D cowgirl with a loaded 20 with auburn hair like a shiny new penny. She stole my core books, my heart, and my favorite pen. And I know I'm never gonna get 'em back again, back again, back again, back again. Kind of a chill version of that, so it's usually like a high energy country song. We made a lot of that up on the spot. We'll get there. I like the idea of it, you know. I think with that, it is time for part 2 of my interview with John Davis. Let us go to video view.
We're these hubs of not just accessing resources, but, you know, having a community. And that's been one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about my 3 big programs that I've run in the past. I'm only doing 2 of them right now, are the Dungeons & Dragons program, the Graphic Book Club, which is it's a comic book club that's weird and neat, but off topic, and then an Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator, which is which is a cooperative starship bridge simulator. It's like Star Trek, but you're all at computers playing together. And each of those programs built up a community of players. People who were part of that community would show up every month, greet their old friends, meet the new people, and help them like find their footing in it. And helping facilitate the creation of those communities has been probably the most rewarding part of the programming that I do. That's been the most fun.
And you said this is the 9th year of the D&D specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So what edition are you playing? The current?
No, so we're actually still using the 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Yeah.
I think 4E is a great system for making people feel, like you talked about, you want something, whatever system you use, you want it
low barrier of entry.
Or they get comfortable with the system quicker than, like you said, moving into, and we'll use this to sort of transition to some other stuff, moving into the role play parts of the game.
Sure. So this is one of the places where my background in clowning really comes forward, because when I'm running a D&D game, I am pretty much able to totally divorce myself from any concept of shame. So I just go, I lean into the goofiness of what I'm doing, and I do the emoting with the face. I do the emoting with the shoulders. I play with my posture. I try as much as I can. Exactly. I try and bring, I try to embody whatever non-player character I'm presenting to the party as much as I can. But the biggest tool of that is I if you've been listening carefully, you might have heard me changing my voice just as I talk. And that's just me talking. When I'm actually attempting to do another voice, mimicking someone or reproducing an accent or something, people tell me I'm pretty good. And I've got a bunch of accents that I keep in my back pocket, a bunch of like speech patterns and like character voices that get reused.
Which is something I respect so much about you, and I've always loved watching. Again, you're really good at that. And
so, going back to when I was doing the intercom announcements before games began, I would a lot of the time do those in voices as teasers of the actual game, and sometimes. There was one instance where I did it, and I have that entire dialogue here, that entire monologue here, the announcement that I did, that made someone fast walk out of the building, muttering to themselves that when you hear something like that, you leave a building. In a world besieged by darkness, where evil lurks, sharpening its blade just beyond your shuttered door. Will you take up the hero's charge and become a beacon of light in this deadly world?
Nice.
Yeah.
Like, I feel challenged. I feel ready to, like, Legend of Zelda.
You're gonna answer the call? I always...
Yeah, man.
I don't always manage it, but a lot of them I try to work in that it's actually something that I took from a marketing training here at the library, some kind of call to action. Like, join us. Come with us. Participate in... Yes, there's a thing happening. Here is a verb that will describe how you will participate in it.
It's funny. I mean, that stuff does work. It's like someone will, like, a YouTube video, like, oh, don't forget to hit like if you enjoy it. I'm like, I will hit like. I did enjoy it.
Yeah, this is not going on this week, so I can... This is the one that I'm actually doing for this month, but it was so perfect for this voice that I decided to pull it out. It started all innocent like. Bunch of weirdos in robes dancing around the mound where the beast is buried. We all figured it were just kids having a laugh, cutting loose. Then animals started disappearing. Cats and dogs at first. Then old Gus's milk cow. Then old Gus himself. This cult must be stopped before another life is taken.
So that's an upcoming game. That's a recent one.
Yep.
So we've got some insider information from the past that'll air in the future, and then
yes, exactly. But yeah, that was the one for last Saturday and for this Friday, because it's twice a month now.
Oh wow!
Yeah, this was a weird one. This was from one of the in-person days. I say, it seems the walls are a bit thin, if you ask me. Not the literal walls, you understand. The metaphysical walls, the ones between here and well, over there, the other side. No one doesn't want those walls to get too thin. Yes, our current trouble would be but a pimple on the face of the moon compared to what will happen if we don't address the issue of the walls. Good thing you've got me here to sort things out. trying to evoke a Bertie Wooster twit for that one. Oh no, that was a pure academic mage who the party had to keep alive.
Oh, an ivory tower type out
on
Oh,
very much so. Yeah. And he was so excited to be out doing an adventure. Look, I brought rope. And I described like he had like 12 inches of rope. But adventurers take rope. I brought rope.
Rope. Find the little twig. It's like, exactly. Adventure games. So you never know what you will combine.
Something has taken the heart of the wood. The center of its power, its magic, is twisted and broken, and the perversion spreads on rotting roots through the forest. The wheeled folk flee before the encroaching shadow. We, the Den Watchers, are the only life left free, and I fear we will not be enough.
Stay a while and listen.
Stay
Delightful.
a while and listen. Rodrim.
Anyway, that was a very
That's
large
good.
that was a very large bear who said that dialogue. One of the den watchers. That was a variation on the old man voice that I did a lot during the height of the lockdown pandemic, where I was just taking, where I was just friends of mine would say, "Hey, read this aloud in your funny old man voice," and I would read I did.
Whatever gets us through the day, man.
Yeah, pretty much. I called that Inside Voices. That was my Inside Voices series because we were all inside. You want to hear the one that...
Give me the scary one.
This is the one that made somebody flee the library.
Oops.
You should not be here. You are too small, too weak to face the challenge before you. My armies are without number. Even now, they invade your world, preparing the way for my ascension. For I hold the soiled heart of the abyss in my hand. I have struck down the Queen of Death, and this time nothing shall stop me. I am Orcus, demon lord of the undead. You will all perish in blood and shadow.
I could see that's delight. That has such a little demonic edge. Just ready to.
Yeah.
But it's like you're not gonna get me. You're not gonna get my blood.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun one. That was what, a couple years ago you said, or
That was the last program that I did. I'm coming to you from the recording studio in the brand new library building downtown that only reopened to the public last year in July. And that announcement that I just did, where the party faced off against a admittedly mightily depowered Orcus Lord of the Undead, was from the final D&D adventure that I did in the old building, which was so much fun. That was such a great one. It ran long.
how long do you mentioned each of your sessions run about 2 hours and change, 2 to 4, give or take?
These days, I've never had a game run less than about 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the I think because right now we're still doing them online. So hey, wherever you're watching this from, you can sign up for the library's Dungeons and Dragons program here in Durham, North Carolina, if you want.
Okay, so that was like he was saying in the chat. You can actually, even if you're not in Durham, you can use the library services, especially during these online times. So you can check out the kind of programs that they offer. So this is in Durham, North Carolina, which is one county over from where I am here in Raleigh, but it's a cool service that's available to locals in the Triangle and a lot of online resources for people. I mean, libraries are a network, so... Excuse me. Talking about storytelling, I thought I'd do a gentle version of What Story Will I Tell? And then we've got another part from John, and I've got one more song, and then just a couple little wrap-up thoughts from the interview, and then that's a wrap, so... Pretty apples drip, pretty poison. How will you find your way home? They say home's where the heart is, but my heart is gone. This time will be different. Don't have to tell the same old tale. This time I'm throwing out the script, but then what story will I tell? But then what story will I tell? Castle cage of my own making. Will I break the spell alone? They say the beauty's in I'm older, but my youth is gone. different. Don't have to tell the same old tale. This time I'm throwing out the script, but then what story will I tell? Then what story will I tell? Thread of sea foam, each step painful. How will I make this one my home? They say that true love stills tongues to silence, but my voice is gone. It's okay, failure is still different. Surely that must count. Watch Rapunzel cut her bangs. Let Britney shave her head if that's what she wants. Well, this time will be different. Don't have to tell the same old tale. This time I'm throwing out the script, but then what story will I tell? But then what story will I tell? Then what story will I tell? I think it's time to hear a little bit more. This next segment with John is actually about some of the different tools that he has used to kind of increase immersion. Because, we're doing now. It's online a lot now, and it's kind of a different. It's still really cool, but it's definitely a different vibe. And there's a big difference to how you perform online versus in person. The same way, there's some differences to how you have meetings online versus in person. So I thought this was a really cool little segment. This is the one where we talk about some of the tools that he uses, and a lot of them are free and you could use right now. So let's swap over. What are some, so talking about that, you've done a lot to kind of, I think, not only say combat that, but work with that by upping some of the immersion.
Yes.
Talking about some of the digital tools, Roll20 is a, do you want to talk a little bit about that and then go into some of the audio
Sure,
stuff
absolutely.
maybe?
So Roll20 is a virtual tabletop space that has all kinds of amazing bells and whistles and tools, and has even more if you're willing to give them a little bit of money for a monthly subscription, and I don't pay for any of that or even use any of that. I use their die roller, and I use the fact that I can get a big piece of virtual tabletop that people can move tokens around on, and that's it. But while I'm Zooming with people, and while we are moving things around on Roll20, I began to play around with this back in the last days of the in-person D&D programs back before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, as you alluded to, I stepped up my game and found new ways to play with audio. I had begun putting together just audio tracks, backing tracks, stuff that would play during games, and I would have a different tracks set up or different soundboards set up depending on the scene. But these days, it's so much more. I have stuff ready because, I'm sitting at a computer where in person I was trying not to. When the mage casts a fireball, there's a big boom spell. When the priest calls down the healing power of their deity. And these are sound clips from a wonderful web resource that I cannot recommend enough. I like them so much that I do give them money every month, although you don't have to access everything. It's called Tabletop Audio, and I'm going to go ahead and share this screen so you guys can see the soundboard that I'm using right now. This is the Tabletop Audio custom sound pad. He's got a bunch of pre-mixed sound pads that are done by different. Don't you see that? That are done by different topic, different category, genre. But it's also things like where did it go? DM tools, which is where a lot of my stuff comes from. He's got pre-mixed backgrounds for a bunch of different standard Dungeons and Dragons settings, all kinds of stuff
atmosphere.
And even he doesn't have any straight up music on here, but he does have these wonderful little music clips. I get a lot of use out of this one. Let me make sure the volume's high enough. Yeah, so here's the mystery sound.
Ooh.
Right?
Is that like kind of wibbly violins? Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that is a lot of fun, like, in Dungeons and Dragons, when someone gets a critical hit, they roll a natural 20 on their die. It's something good always happens. And to take that up a notch during play when someone gets a critical hit with is just delightful.
Nice.
And I weave stuff together. For example, like that fireball noise that I made was actually two sounds. I would do the fire.
Oh, and then the boom. Okay, so you can overlap them and make like timing and stuff. That's cool.
Exactly. There's a one of the war priest cleric spells. They summon the power of the sun into their mace and it explodes around them. And I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I can mix them up and play around with them. And
yeah, I like the combo.
But I do want to emphasize, as neat as the sound pad is, I get almost as much use out of the full background tracks that the guy makes, which you can see. Did that swap over correctly?
Yes.
So you can see all of these different ones. You do have to be online to use his tools, but they're all over the place. All kinds of different, searchable by genre or by name.
Oh, that's great.
It's super handy, and there are all these 10-minute loopable tracks that are just fabulous. But he also, a lot of the time, especially in things like the DM tools, has these great loopable backgrounds for different environments. I mentioned it, but this is the village background.
Oh, nice.
Right? Mm-hmm. And you can compare that to the
like
city background.
City. Got the bells.
And dungeon.
Nice. It sounds dank.
Yeah, it does.
There's a dankness.
And it's got footsteps woven in, all kinds of things.
Oh, what a great resource. This is Tabletop Audio, and it's primarily a free resource. You can donate to it, but it is available,
Yeah.
so that's cool.
Yeah, the donations from lunatics like me who use it constantly to the point that I feel guilty if I didn't throw them a little bit. Make it available for everybody else.
Yeah, what a cool tool. The fact that it's like so many mix and match sounds, and having a soundboard is actually a lot of fun. Someone who works with like audio engineering, it's the same principle, Yeah, you've talked about that a lot, like how much it's added, I think, especially to the online games, to have something that's a little bit more like, what was that,
Yeah, it definitely helps overcome the lack of immersion. Because, when you're sitting around a table with a group of people, even if they're not your friends, even if it's a bunch of strangers at a convention or a library or a game shop, there is an energy that's present around the table that isn't as present when it's you, possibly sitting alone at your computer or phone. And so anything that can be done to increase that energy, to pull people together, to make them all, like, you're all hearing the same sound, the same music, the same background, anything to kind of build that narrative space that we all share is even more important when circumstances are keeping everybody apart. Yeah.
Is it common for libraries to run programs like this with D&D or other tabletop stuff, or?
So you'll see a lot more libraries these days that have some kind of tabletop something. Most of the time it's going to be board games, and I'll throw a note that there will be in-person board game events happening at the downtown library here in Durham in July. One of my colleagues is starting that up, and I think it's going to be great. You'll even find libraries, there are a lot of libraries, not ours right now, that are doing like board game. They have a board game collection that circulates, like you can come in and check out board games from the library. D&D programs and role-playing game programs in general are a little bit less common, largely I think because it really requires you to have someone on staff who has that skill set and background, because it requires a very specific skill set, not just to run the games, but to run them consistently for a group of strangers at dramatically different levels of experience. And so if it's someone who is, cutting their teeth on running games, that is the most terrifying environment to start doing it in.
Right.
I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying
but
that
it's the deep end.
Yeah, you're jumping straight into the deep end.
The deep end of the dungeon.
Yes, and that just sounds very dank. Very,
Too
very
dank. Too dank for the public library.
Too dank. You have to remember, it is a collaborative storytelling experience. There are going to be people at the table who will take that stick and run with it, and they might run with it into areas that the library isn't comfortable with. So unless you set out at the beginning, this is the table culture, these are the expectations, this goes beyond the lines and veils and X card, O card stuff that you might do with your trusted friends or even semi-trusted strangers, because my God, it's local government.
I really want to do like a whole outtakes clip of like some of the stuff. That's one of the funny things that we kept in. I mean, there's lots of funny stuff, but like, oh, fix it in post. Oh my God, it's local government. I'll talk a little bit more about toward the end about some of my experiences with D&D while we do the closing. I have one more song for you guys, and then we have just a few more minutes of my interview with John. But like, mostly I just think it's really interesting he talked about not a lot of libraries have D&D programs implemented because it is something that you probably need sort of an existing skill set for. But it's the kind of thing like you can develop. Seeing people that we'll talk about approachability and stuff at the end. Let me before I get off track. This is another D&D song. You might recognize the tune, but we mentioned the different kinds of play styles like disaster bards or murder hobos, and this is one to the murder hobos who sort of indiscriminately like kill for loot, and it's like you're not bad, you're just kind of dumb. I should have murder hobos. I should write a disaster bard song. But this is the battle hymn of the murder hobos. I don't know why I said it like hobo. We don't keep track of money or know where our gear is stored. We don't keep up with backstories or read a word of lore. We just loose the fateful lightning of our fracking magic swords. We slaughter all night long. Glory, glory, murder hobo. Glory, glory, murder hobos. Glory, glory, murder hobos. Roll initiative. We're stealing sacred objects from indigenous peoples, and we're checking every trunk and barrel for shiny baubles. It's not endorsement, genocide's a useful tool for all minor squabbles. We slaughter all night long. Glory, glory, murder hobos. Glory, glory, murder hobos. Glory, glory, murder hobos. Roll initiative. My husband worked on this last verse with me. Now we're so high level that we've gotten to OP, and the only beings we've yet to kill are all deities. We'll don their sacred vestments and then laugh at all the plebes. We slaughter all night long. Glory, glory, murder hobos. Glory, glory, murder hobos. Glory, glory, murder hobos. Roll initiative. my to all the people that make DMs figure out how to put back the rails. I feel like I've been playing a lot of The Sims 4 again, and I remind you that I have Fieri House, which is an entire house that's filled with 5 Guy Fieris with different little quirks. I tell them apart by the color of their sunglasses. So there's like blue Fieri and green Fieri. But I feel like sometimes, because I've run games before too, and it's a lot of fun. But it does sometimes feel like you're trying to get your Sims to do something, and it's like they're fun and entertaining, and they figure out creative ways around things, but also they're still Sims, and you're like, oh, I had a plan, and it's like, okay, well, new plan. But I've got just a little bit more with my interview with John Davis, and in this section we talk a little bit more about approachability and accessibility, and just some little wrap-up stuff. So what are some of the things you do if it does? Like I said, I want to go back to like whether it's like kids or adults, or like it's hard to, or like all ages, which are all different things, and it's hard to find that balance, because then there are a lot of people that think all ages means children, and then other people. But then if you say it's adult, it's like, well, if there's like a mature, it's.
I have a little checklist speech thing that I go through at the beginning of every game, which is everything from "Hi, my name is John. I'm the librarian who's been running D&D at the library," down to "You're all playing heroes. You don't have to be Dudley Do-Right. Ting, but you can. But you're a good person. You're a hero. There's a time and a place for evil D&D campaigns, and it's not with a group of strangers at your public library." And it addresses some of that stuff.
Oh, I wanted to mention too. So, what are some of the things you do? Because you are up in public works and stuff. Like, how do you keep things relatively on the rails? Not necessarily story wise, but content wise and culture and tone wise. Like,
well, first of all, when things do start to drift, I hit them with humor. I disrupt with laughter, and then guide things back to more appropriate stuff. But I haven't even had to do that much. The biggest frustrations have been people who dominate the table, like imposing, like, don't let anyone else act, don't let anybody else talk. They never pass the talking stick, or like lately being online, people who are just ghosts, like they are completely silent until, and like blank screen, completely silent until combat starts, and that's fine. Like, if I could see your face, if I knew you were there,
you'd feel a little more,
just a little bit more. Yeah. But that might just be me. That might be a me thing.
No, I think performing online, like when no one's talking back, or chatting back, or you can't see, it's harder to know, to gauge, like, okay, do I still have everybody together?
Yep,
things
for
like
sure.
that. I can see it's a challenge. So, no, it's tough. Like, again, like, you don't want anyone to feel like censored, or like that their content is like bad or good or whatever. But there is a reality that it is for a public library. There are certain tones, and it's like you can't be every tone or every topic like all the time and open to all of them. It's okay to have spaces that are more geared toward not so, I don't want to say not so heavy, but not so intense.
It is exactly the same as, like, I don't do campaign games at the library. We do these little one-shotty, in the past I've done like 2 or 3 shot little like duologies or trilogies. That was a single story arc over 2 or 3 months. But there's still these little nugget things with pre-generated characters. It's a completely valid way to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's not the only way. And it's the same thing. Dungeons and Dragons. There was a wonderful essay that I read somewhere, and I wish I could. If I can find it, I'll send you a link, which says, when you walk up to somebody and they're like, "Hey, do you want to play Dungeons and Dragons?" That's like it's like walking up to someone and them saying, "Hey, do you want to play cards?" Okay. It's a bunch of tools that you have an idea about maybe what sort of game it's going to be, but it could be poker, it could be it could be bridge, it could be blackjack, it could be solitaire. It's cards, it's Dungeons and Dragons, it could be murder hobos, it could be deep, intense role play, it could be political drama, it could be a heist, it could be disaster bards, it could be Conan. It's all valid Dungeons and Dragons-y things, but in many places mutually exclusive.
But what are some of the things that you get out of it that you enjoy?
It looks really good on my annual report.
It's very active.
Looks very nice. Yeah, it's very active. Yeah. I get to feel like I'm stretching those creative muscles in a way that is mostly re-energized. It's a way to fill the bucket at work when sometimes the work of a public librarian can empty the bucket pretty effectively. And so this is definitely a kind of work that makes me be like, yeah, an idea's coming together. The little pieces are fitting together. I got a cool story. I got some neat art. I got a cool background thing. I figured out the voices for the primary NPCs. Still got to come up with names. I'm terrible with names.
It's so hard.
It's terrible. And the lists, the generators online are garbage for the most part. But anyway, that's probably the biggest thing. Plus, I love getting to meet players, especially honestly for as much as the table is sometimes complicated by the Utes. Getting to watch players grow up is amazing, and I'm happy when I see the same people coming back month after month. But I'm just as happy when I don't see someone for months, and then they show up again, or they respond to an email, and they're like, "Yeah, I haven't been coming by that often because do you know that other person who was at that game? We got some friends together and we started a game of our own." That's like yes, either reigniting the love of the hobby in people because I get a lot of folks in their 30s and 40s who are like, "Yeah, I played back in the 90s or back in the 80s when I was in high school or college, and I haven't since then," or parents bringing their kids, getting people into it again, or lighting that fire in folk for whom it had never been a thing. That's the good stuff. Making sure that this hobby continues on, whether it's D&D or any other kind of role play.
This has been a really cool journey through one, your interest in it and the tools you use, but also just what it means to do this in a public setting. And I just really appreciate you being on the show and talking about these kinds of like intersections of storytelling and community. So
a last soundbite that you might weave back in someplace earlier as appropriate or whatever, but I had a lot of people, often women, who would approach me and say, "Thank you so much for doing this. I've always been interested in role playing, but I never felt comfortable doing it at a game store, and I definitely didn't feel comfortable going to a relative stranger's house and playing at their coffee table. So having that take place in a public library setting with a employee rather than even a third party contractor," which I know some librarians have had mixed results with.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, because I'd always been interested in it as a woman, but I didn't get into it until college when people were playing in the dorm lounges. The
shared spaces that were safe.
Mm-hmm. The third place, it felt more approachable than because there is it's a whole thing about gatekeeping and exclusion and inclusion in nerd spaces. But I think you're right, offering something that's talking about accessibility in the various ways. I think that's an excellent point. So
librarians all about the accessibility.
Yeah, boy. Clip that. That's yeah. All right. Well, John, again, thank you so much. This has been really fun and really interesting, and I can't wait to share it with people. So
awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
And with that, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I'm really excited. It's sort of like a different sort of episode, just since I wound up, I was gauging with the interview with John to be like, 15, 20 minutes. And then we wound up talking for about an hour, and I clipped out about half of it, and there was still so much really cool, interesting stuff. So I'm excited to try and do to sort of set up these like interview segments. But let me roll credits. Here's my roll credits. Here we go. But one of the things that I think is really cool, the first tabletop role-playing game I played was Spycraft, the Spycraft D20 system. And my first character was codenamed Musetta. And I was the face, so I had like high charisma. But I remember like instead of a, you had like Kevlar tuxedo liners, so mine was like a Kevlar slip, and I had like flashbang grenade earrings and stuff. Those are the things, like the gadgety things, I think is one of the things in Spycraft that I just adored. And I wound up running like a 60s style campaign that was a lot of fun later. But anyway, I just want to say again, thank you to my other side. Subscribers and patrons, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation about Dungeons and Dragons and public service. Everybody have a lovely evening, and see you guys next week.